Hello, and welcome to a new monthly feature we are doing in connection with the Houston Endowment funded project, Finding Alternative Futures Phase 2. In these monthly blog posts, we will cover some of the most pertinent research and ideas that are at the heart of the FAF2 Museum Digital Fluency Project. In this inaugural video teaser, I want to introduce our newest partner, Ed Rodley from the Experience Alchemists, who will author these monthly blog posts along with periodic white papers. Ed and I have worked together for over 8 years, and I'm happy to share his deep expertise of Muse Tech on these member-facing posts. Welcome, Ed.
Thank you, Alex. It's good to be here, and it's exciting to be working together again.
Great. What do we have? What can you tease out some of the areas that you're going to cover in the first post this month?
Sure. So one of the things that we wanted to try to do with this add-on project to FAF Phase 2 was to give the rest of the Texas Association of Museums community a chance to sort of see what's happening. So even if you're not part of this very small Houston-based cohort, there's still a ton of stuff there, pretty much all of it, that's applicable to all of the members of TAM. So how do we provide all of the members with the same kind of information and expertise that the participants of the workshops are getting in a format that is, easily snackable, something you can do on your lunchtime and in the interstices of your work. So this idea for a series of blog posts and white papers is basically designed to be a chance for you all to sort of follow along throughout the course of the project and read the same things that they're reading, think about the same issues they're thinking about, and try, similar tools to the tools that they're looking at. And one of the things we want to do ourselves is try to not just tell you about all of these things, but sort of show you what it's like in practice as well. So we're going to spend probably regularly little chunks of time exposing our own workflow, so you get an understanding of what this kind of work looks like in a museum context in the 21st sort of almost post-COVID future.
Great. And I know that you've sourced some choice links for us on this next blog post. I think let's maybe take a couple minutes on some of these. I'll get us started. One of the things that I've been paying very close attention to is the Museum Learning Hub. I actually participated in one of the workshops on getting audience participation in live streamed events. But the Institute of Museum and Library Services launched the Museum Learning Hub this year. And it's a nationwide initiative organized by the 6 U.S. Regional Museum Association, and it's dedicated to providing free self-paced training, particularly aimed at smaller museums. And it's part of their digital empowerment project. And it provides digital media and technology capacity building programs and resources. And it's a great add-on to what we're doing here with FAF2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of the ones that I added is a project that started in the UK at the University of Leicester called One by One that I've been following for a number of years. So even before the pandemic, Ross Parry and folks at Leicester were thinking about how do museums respond to digital technologies. And one of the things I particularly like about that program in general is that they talk a lot about digital confidence as opposed to digital maturity. Because with all of these technologies, I'm sure everyone watching this has had the experience of being faced with a technology you've never used before, and you either go for it or not. And that idea, that's something everybody's doing. Like, nobody knows what the outcomes or what the futures of these technologies is going to be. And it just takes a certain level of courage to be able to say, like, you know what, I'm going to give this tool a try. And Leicester's framing that way, I think, has allowed them to do some really interesting work. And they've just recently expanded the program into the US. They're working with the Smithsonian and Carolyn Royston and the crew at Cooper Hewitt National Design Museum. And there's some interesting stuff coming out of there. So if you're looking for sort of a longer perspective on museums' relationships with digital technology, any of their papers are a great place to go. And so then next you had, which one was it?
It was the Knight Foundation, and that's a great report. It's on I have a link on our website. It's called Digital Readiness and Innovation in Museums, and it really explores it explores what happens when you fund museum digital positions and what works best and what doesn't. They worked with AAM, and they captured data from 480 museums of all sizes across all 50 states. And the Knight Foundation is of particular interest because Coben Smith was working with us to develop some of the topics that have informed this project, and he is now at the Knight Foundation. So really paying attention to the space over there. And then next to you.
So AAM has put out a number of sort of COVID-related resources for people who are AAM members. And so even though I generally don't refer things that are behind paywalls, their digital readiness and pandemic adaptations report is kind of interesting because that's what AAM really does best, I think, is pull in from all kinds of museums all over the country to show you the different ways that different kinds of institutions are thinking, like, okay, what do we do now going forward? So if you are AAM members, it's definitely worth taking a look at that one. Likewise, if you're looking for a larger perspective of how industry is responding to this, PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is one of the big three consulting firms on the planet, put out a report looking at the entire entertainment and media industry. And museums are sort of adjacent to that in terms of they're both places where people go to spend their leisure time. So the issues that movie theaters and amusement parks are facing and trying to figure out how to get audiences back are not that dissimilar. And they spend a lot more money than the entire museum sector does trying to figure these things out. So they're often a very useful source for gleaning useful intelligence.
Yeah, and back to AAM, their report measuring the impact of COVID-19 on people in the museum field is definitely a good read. They've been surveying all throughout the pandemic to really understand, how is the pandemic affecting employees, people employed within the museum community, whether they've been furloughed, laid off, independent contractors, volunteers, students, all of those folks have been impacted in some way. And so that report goes into that. Much in the same way, Nemo provided this report, follow-up survey on the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on museums in Europe, which surveyed 600 museums from 48 countries to give us that European perspective. Some of the themes were consequences of income and other losses. 2, the increased importance of digital museum offers. And 3, adapted operations and preparedness during and for crises.
And so we'll give you 2 more that are looking a little bit further afield. There is an organization based in the UK called Museum Next that runs a bunch of conferences and meetup events. So with Museum Next Digital, they have one targeting the cultural sector writ large called Culture Geek. And they do a very, very good job of trying to do trend forecasting. They're very focused on what's happening now and what's likely to be influential in the next 12 to 18 months. So they have an interesting report on artificial intelligence and the way that it's sort of seeping into everything. So even if you don't think that you are in the position to be doing anything with AI, actually you probably are already, you just don't know it yet. It provides a useful, I think, lens at looking at how these larger technologies, kind of like tidal waves, they just sort of come crashing over the field. And you really need to sort of understand at least the base level of what these things are about in order to surf that wave successfully. And then the last of them all is a piece written by a museum director in Singapore that I think is really, it's a really great example of how to craft a institutionally specific vision of what a COVID response looks like. And so even though the National Gallery is focused particularly on modern and contemporary art, even if you're not a modern or contemporary art museum person, just looking at the way that he has framed what are the things that are important for the museum going forward, I think is, it's one of the best ones I've seen.
Okay, great. Well, I hope this this teaser piques your interest and gets you reading and following along with us. And so on behalf of TAM and the FAF2 team, I want to thank Ed and the team from the Experience Alchemist for joining us. And I look forward to sharing our editorial work with you. That's all I have today.
Hearing from you too. So,
oh, yes, yes. Well, thank you, Ed.
All right. Cheers, Alex.
Bye, y'all.